Jake-san, konnichiwa.
Hi, konnichiwa.
I think that was pretty good, right? That eliminates.
That's pretty good. I'm more of an Ohayo gozaimasu, that type of guy.
I don't understand the difference because I don't understand the words.
Yeah, Ohayo gozaimasu means good morning, and konnichiwa is just the general hello. But I mean, a lot of times you're just gonna hear Ohayo or Ohayo gozaimasu like throughout most of the day. Konbanwa means good night, like good evening.
Huh.
Just in case you wanted to know.
Well, now I do know. It's like, as I understand it, when speaking Spanish, most of the time you don't say hola. Like when you answer the phone, you say bueno.
Do you?
That's what I've heard.
I didn't even know.
I've heard it a time or two in practice, but my response is normally, bueno, hablas inglés?
That makes perfect sense to me. I'm glad I know that now. Now I'm going to answer my phone, bueno.
I think you should.
Bueno.
See where that gets you. We're all about learning and growing, being tolerant individuals. But you weren't always that way, Jake, or at least because I'm spinning the narrative that way. How did you learn to quit being a sexist prick?
Anytime you want to spin a narrative, you can. And it's your right as apparently an American, because there's a lot of spinning narratives going around right now, yeah?
It's how you know you're truly free.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of narratives. I guess we were talking about this earlier. I guess I was sexist at one point, Pete.
You guess?
I didn't think I was. But when I started telling you about this situation, you said that there were sexist undertones.
Oh, yeah. And not so much overtones. They were overt. You're overt sexism.
They were over. Okay. I guess I'll have to elaborate to save myself. I've already buried myself 1 minute into the podcast. I think our listeners know I'm not really sexist, though.
Well, do they?
We'll see. I'll try and prove it.
Show them how you've grown.
Yeah. So just as a heads up for anyone listening, it's not exactly the most uplifting episode of Off the Cliff Pod. We're going to try and sprinkle some humor in there, but there's some serious stuff today. So if you want to laugh, maybe listen to a different episode.
Yeah, probably not good to laugh at this content directly because you might be a bad person.
No, there's some funny stuff that we're going to bring up in here, like my sexism. But just as a heads up, everybody. So I think I've been wanting to talk about the last few weeks has been just kind of like weighing heavy on my heart, Pete. And I just want to vent about it a little bit. A few of my friends know, and a few of the listeners have actually kind of said some stuff to me about this. But there's this really awesome chick that I knew that passed away a few weeks ago. And that just really sucks because she was only 22 and she was just a badass. It was a young lady named Hannah Kimura, and she trained with us at Wrestle One. Now I'll go into my sexism.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Your blatant sexism.
All right, sweet. So I don't recall if this was my first tour of Japan or my second tour of Japan, but either way, it would have been 2016. And I was at the Wrestle One dojo in Shinjuku, Tokyo, the place that changed me forever. And one day I showed up to practice and I was looking around and stretching out and stuff and getting ready for practice. And then all of a sudden I turn to my right and I see one or two of the young boys and then a girl.
It's so funny to me that they're called young boys. That's why the giggles.
Yeah, the two young boys and then a young girl, Pete.
Was she holding cigarettes and mints and things like that? Almost like the old-timey people who would walk around bars and stuff back in the day? Maybe serving cocktails as well?
Well, now you sound sexist. Why does the server have to be female?
Well, she's in a male gym.
Okay. All right. So
don't put this on me.
Yeah. I look over to my right and there's two young boys and then there's a female there, which is, it shouldn't be as shocking as it actually was. But in the wrestling culture in Japan, men and women are segregated, Pete. There are male companies and there are female companies. There's very little crossover. Like, for instance, the biggest companies will not have female matches on their show. And if they do, it's a very rare occurrence that happens once or twice a year. It's very taboo to intermingle the men and the women.
No touching.
No touching. Also, yeah, sometimes Japanese people just have sex like an average once or twice a year. Do you know that?
That's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing I read statistically. Maybe not the guys I've lived with or my friends, but the general populace.
Man, that's kind of unfortunate. I'm sorry, guys.
So no intermingling. Maybe that's a reason that foreign men are so sought after there. We have a natural sex drive.
That's what it is.
We have a Western sex drive.
Maybe we should just chemically castrate ourselves. We'll all be better off.
I guess. Sex drive goes hand in hand with arrogance. Yeah, American arrogance. So, but I look over and I see this young female, and she looks really young. And by that, what I actually mean is she's small. Like, she's tiny. She was like
petite, even.
Petite, yeah. She's like 80 pounds. I'm like, oh man. And she's got wrestling shoes on, and she's obviously going to train with us. I'm like, oh, okay. This is kind of crazy. She comes up to me and says hello. And, like, watashi wa hanakamura desu.
Konnichiwa.
Did I say konnichiwa?
You didn't.
Okay, yeah. So
I threw it in there to try and act like I knew what was up.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. Hi. Like, nice to meet you. And we have just a very brief interaction because the young boys and the young trainees are kind of like intimidated / not allowed to talk to us. Right. So we start a training session, and she does every single thing that the men do. Like, we do all the stretches, we do all the rolls, we do all the bumps, we start running drills. She is like, I am 220 pounds at the time, Pete, and the average size of the males in this training facility are like 200 to 240 pounds. There are a few guys that are probably $160, but like, you're 2 to 240. I'm average size here. And we're doing these drills and just running through each other, because in practice you go hard. And when the young kids are there, you go harder. Like, you rough them up a little bit, you brutalize them. Therefore, they're impenetrable and tough and like take no nonsense, which I actually think is a good thing. It's not actually bullying in the context.
You're against penetrating young boys. Understood.
I wouldn't penetrate the young boys. That's for others to do. So
that's right. That's why you make them unpenetrable.
Yeah, exactly. Like granite. So, but this little girl is getting shoulder tackled and clotheslined and hip tossed. And man, also, Trey Insider's fact about a pro wrestling ring. The structure of a pro wrestling ring are a steel frame, a bunch of crisscrossing steel beams, and then wood planks over the top of it. Pro wrestling rings are designed to give just a little bit, but they're only designed to give if like 300 to 400 pounds of pressure hits them. So anything less than, say, 200 to 300 pounds hitting the dead center of that ring will make it not give. But if two people like you and me hit the ground at the same time, we have 440 pounds of force, right? So like, the ring will bounce a little bit. But if you're 84 pounds and you are getting slammed, the ring doesn't give, Pete.
That kind of sucks.
Yeah. So when 240 pound Kumaguro barrels through Hana Kimura with a shoulder tackle and she's 84 pounds, she just smokes the ground. There's no body fat on that girl. So like, bam. So, but anyway, and then we also have to do like 300 squats that day and 300 push-ups and everything. And she's doing it like a champ. She gets through training, and I'm just like, man, all the respect in the world to that little girl, because that was brutal. Like, it hurts me. Like, especially those first couple months of training, they hurt the hell out of me. And I'm a 30-year-old male, 220, that can handle my own, right? Then after training, we have an actual little conversation, and she just was like trying really, really hard to speak English with me, which doesn't happen a lot. So obviously I've had this conversation on a lot of the podcasts before where
you speak very poor English and they're embarrassed for you, so they don't try.
Yes, exactly. So my English is so bad it embarrasses and shames them. But no, same thing. Like I said, Japanese people don't want to try and speak English with a lot of foreigners because they feel like they'll make a mistake and then they feel shame. So they would just rather not speak English and potentially make a mistake. As an American, we love when people make mistakes, Pete. If I answer the phone bueno, I probably don't feel embarrassed when an actual Spanish speaking individual laughs at me and they're like, you're stupid.
You should feel shame. You should feel great shame.
Dude, if you're an American and you're on Duolingo for 3 days, you feel pretty confident going to France and speaking French, or going to Germany and speaking German, right? Yeah, exactly. You can say 3 things and ask where the toilet is. If you're an American, you're doing it. You're going down to Nicaragua and asking donde es la baño.
I can figure out where to crap and where I can get a beer. That's all I need, man.
Yes, cerveza. It was one of those moments where she just made my day so much better because she tried to have a conversation with me. Over the next few months I was there, not consecutive months, but over the next few months I was there, I would see her in practice every now and then, and we would have a nice conversation. She was just the sweetest young girl, and also beautiful and super talented in the ring too. This went on over a course of a couple of years. Then she spent 3 years training my company. Now, at my company in Wrestle One, in our 6 years, we had 2 females that were allowed to train with us. One was Hannah, probably because her mom was a legend in Japan. She was
was Hulk Hogan?
Maybe not quite Hulk Hogan. What's the female Hulk Hogan? What do you think the female Hulk Hogan is?
Moolah May?
That's a pretty good guess. A conglomeration of 2 really good females, Pete. Moolah May.
What were the actual names independently of each other?
Yeah, Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young.
Oh, okay.
I'm really proud of you, though. Man, that was good. I want everyone to clap for Pete right now.
I put in the time, spent the time doing the research.
So you exhausted your wrestling female knowledge.
That's true. Unless we bring up Trish Stratus and whatever what's-her-face was with the Hardy twins.
Well, it sounds like we're stretching now. Lita? It's Lita. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so her mom was Moolah May of Japan, and except she did death matches and stuff too. She was pretty crazy. So that's probably how Hannah got into our dojo, because her mom was very respected. And then the only other person that ever get in our dojo was a female was Reika Saiki, who I've spoken about before on here, who I also love because she's in the band Deadlift Lolita. And if you've never looked up Deadlift Lolita, you should do it now and maybe even YouTube it and see their performance, because it's her and a guy named Ladybeard, and they're just this great, weird pop duo. And I believe I had an episode where I talked about how I got to be in one of their concerts in Chicago and beat them up.
Except I'm still curious, what's her deadlift style?
Go
sumo? What are we talking here?
I think it's a little racist to say she sumo deadlifts.
No, it's the style sumo.
Are you sure?
Or she go the over under? What does she do?
Oh man, I know I've seen photos of or videos of her on Instagram deadlifting. I feel like there was conventional, man.
All right.
But so Reika, I think, I could be wrong. I think she got in the dojo because she is what they call a muscle idol, Pete, because that's a thing in Japan. She is a short, super cute female with a high-pitched voice with a lot of muscles.
Oh, Ace Perry.
Kind of. There's some similarities in the two, yeah. They're the same height, they're very muscly, and a lot of creepy old men are sexually attracted to them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was all unspoken, but yeah, that's exactly what
that's why I'm just clarifying. So that's probably why Reika was in the dojo. Reika is another amazing human being. She's great too. So those are the 2 females that were allowed to train with us. Yeah. So then over the course of the next couple of years, Hannah trained with Wrestle One for like 3 years. Then she got the opportunity to go to a different company, a women's company called Stardom. And Stardom is the biggest women's company in Japan. It's totally the place to be. And also, it's where they bring over the most foreigners. So I got to be friends with some of the Stardom girls later on when my friend Kelly came over to wrestle for Stardom. And I got to hang out with a bunch of those girls and stuff like that. And they were all really great. And Stardom's also the home of a couple girls that are like the best women in WWE right now, which are Io Shirai and Kairi Sane. Neither here nor there. Hannah got the opportunity to go over to Stardom. So, and it was the right move for her because Wrestle One wasn't going to offer her a lot in terms of matches. She was never going to be a marquee player because it's a men's company. So she went to Stardom and started killing it. And she went through this great transition, like this great evolution, going from just like kind of scared, generic looking little girl to like charismatic, larger than life woman. And she started doing like this cyberpunk style character and gimmick, and her gear was amazing. And she like braided her hair like long pink braids. She just turned into a total badass and like really found herself. So over the years, I would watch her work, and she was just fantastic, man, just stellar. In fact, before she left Wrestle One, we had a Wrestle One dojo show, and they brought in a woman named Hikaru Shida to work with Hannah, and those two they were the main event. And they put on one of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen live. So I'm watching this from like the little like balcony in our gym. I'm upstairs on the track watching, and these two just go out there and they kill it. And the women over there also just like brutalize each other too, because the women in Japan train so much harder and more snug and fierce because people don't take women fighting as seriously as men. So these two women went out and just tore the house down. It was incredible. I wish it was a thing I could get on tape or they'd YouTube or whatever. I don't even know if it was on video. Anyway, over the course of her couple years, she had this great transition. In fact, she ended up getting a chance within the last year to come over as part of a super show at Madison Square Garden. So she got to wrestle at Madison Square Garden. And then a few months later, she got to wrestle at the legit biggest show in Japan, which is Wrestle Kingdom. It happens every January. It's put on by New Japan, the biggest company. And they had bought Stardom. So they had a Stardom exhibition match. So Hannah got to wrestle in the Tokyo Dome in front of like 50,000 people or something like that too. So within a few months, she wrestled in MSG and in the Tokyo Dome, which is insane because the number of men that have done that's slim to none.
Jericho for sure. Triple H, maybe Rock.
Well, Jericho for sure. Jericho definitely has, but the Rock and Triple H did not. They didn't have Japanese runs.
Yeah, but they still could have wrestled in those places.
Well, Madison Square Garden was practically owned by WWE. This was the first non-WWE show there in like 40 years. It was a New Japan Ring of Honor show. So that's pretty sweet. I was super happy because I had a bunch of friends on that show too. So cool. Yeah, so she did like all these super incredible things in just like 22 years. And then I knew that she was on this reality TV show, but I didn't really know what it was about, right? Honestly, when I first heard she was on this show, I thought it was a reality show based only from Stardom Wrestling. I didn't realize it was a Japanese TV show that was also on Netflix and stuff called Terrace House.
So like if the Divas had a house or something like that, this would be the reality show is kind of what you were thinking.
Yeah, I kind of thought this was a total Divas-esque show. So I was like, oh, she's on that show. I kind of thought it was just a Stardom women's wrestling thing, which actually interested me because there's a great documentary on the Stardom called it's on the Wrestlers Vice series. It was on Stardom. I think everyone should watch that. It's the Wrestlers, I think season 1, episode 3. And it shows how hard the women of Stardom work and train. There's also another great documentary on women's training in Japan. It's called the Gaea Girls documentary, GAEA, which is from like 2000 that people should definitely look up. I want to say Hannah's mom might have even been in a very small part of that one. I could be wrong. But those are great documentaries. I would totally watch them. And Hannah's in the Stardom one too, some. But so I guess there's a reality TV show where it's like 6 people in a house. It's like 3 young girls, 3 young guys, and they're just like dating and having fun and like growing up and maturing together. So, not anything crazy or too unlike American reality shows. In fact, I think Terrace House also has other locations. Like Terrace House, I don't know if there's a US one, but I think there might be like a South America one.
Starring The Situation and Ronnie.
And see, I love Jersey Shore. Now, the cool thing about Jersey Shore, though, is all these people were like in their 30s. Like Vinny, the youngest guy, was like 28 or 29, which in a way is great because there's more emotional maturity from 29 to 40 years old, slightly.
And what's funny is there was not a lot of emotional maturity on that show, but it could only have been made worse if they were in their 20s.
Yes. If they were 19, 20, 21, 22, that could only make it worse. I hadn't watched this show, but I heard that there was a scene. I heard that she was a pretty loved character on the show. Also, another thing a friend told me was that in the show at one point, she had told somebody that she didn't like speaking English with people because she wasn't confident in her English, and that it came across like how difficult that was for her. And when I heard that, it just like kind of like made a tear kind of come to my eye because she tried to speak English with me. And like, that's just awesome, especially when she voiced her insecurity about speaking English with people. So that's just super cool. But I guess there was like a scene on the show, something happened, and she got a lot of hate for it. And like her Twitter blew up, like thousands of people were tweeting her like all this really horrible stuff. And some of it was like, we hate you and kill yourself. And then she killed herself. So like, that really sucks. It's just like such a total bummer. And who knows everything else that kind of went around it. I ended up watching a few episodes of the show since then, just because I had to get like a grasp, like a little bit more, like I needed to know more of the context. So I watched a few episodes. I haven't gotten to where like the incident took place or whatever. It's also weird. So there's 6 people on the show, and then I don't know if it's a commercial break timing thing. It'll go to like 6 adults or whatever talking about them. And I don't know if these are psychologists or behavioral analysis, but they are dissecting the behavior of all these people. So like, oh man, she's really into this guy, or this person's body language is saying this thing, which is interesting. I probably would have hated it if someone told me the idea, but now like that I saw a few episodes, I can totally understand why people would watch it. It's interesting. But it seemed like she was like a super loved character on the show and brought like great energy. And like even the people in the house were talking about the great energy she brought. And then later on, X amount of episodes later, I guess the scene was, I could be wrong, a little bit off. It's like a guy didn't realize her wrestling gear was in the washer, threw his stuff in there, then threw it all in the dryer. Anyway, ruined it all because you can't really do that with wrestling gear. And she like yelled at the guy and knocked his hat off, which doesn't to me seem like anything, you know? Plus, I feel like people wouldn't understand the importance of someone's wrestling gear because it's not like a $20 pair of leggings. It could be like wrestling gear in Japan's probably $1,000 for what she had, and she might have worn that in Tokyo Dome and in Madison Square Garden. And I can guarantee you that she's one of 3 females who's ever done something so awesome.
So you're saying my LuLaRoe leggings that I ordered off of Facebook can't have that kind of sentimental value to me?
Are these Lululemon?
No, Lululemon is a different brand, which is expensive. I thought LuLaRoe was like a Sensi brand. Like
I don't know.
A bunch of women sold leggings.
Oh, in that case, yeah, totally not. It's not the same. Now, Lululemon, maybe because I think a pair of Lululemon leggings are like $700.
They're not quite that expensive, but they're expensive.
I know they're like $100.
Yes.
I've been there one time. And Dom once talked about his Lululemon outfit, and his whole outfit was like, it was a shirt and I think leggings, and it cost him like $180.
Oh, I believe it.
Something insane. Yeah, so it's a little different. Even then, like if I have my sweet Under Armour Project Rock joggers on right now, and I think those were like $60 without a discount. So you know, like after like this is like $45 that would have gotten ruined, and I'd be pissed. But I also didn't wear these joggers inside the Tokyo Dome, Korakuen Hall, and Madison Square Garden in the last year. I might be a little more salty, right? So I think there's another thing, like nobody, if you're on Twitter, you probably don't care enough to even think more about surface level into anything anyway. But yeah, so I haven't seen that scene yet. I'm sure I'll probably get to it at some point. But like watching the episodes was like kind of hard. I probably won't actually watch the rest of them. Because now it doesn't like, I don't know if I want to see like her being so happy and young and like naive, right? Like right now, the last episode I saw, she was like talking about this guy and she couldn't do it without just dying laughing and smiling. And it's like, man, she's 22 years old and doesn't really know what life is yet.
That gets to be the problem though, too, I think. Just because you mentioned everything being so surface level. At 22, I think you kind of think you have stuff figured out, just like you did toward middle or later years in high school. It's all still kind of that same age group. You think that you have things figured out, or this is the worst I've ever felt, so this is the worst I'm ever going to feel, or I'm going to feel this way forever, or, you know, I love this person. Oh my God, because of the first person I loved, I'm going to love them forever. It's like you haven't really figured out what life's about, or that there are ups and downs, but when there's down, there's got to be an up at some point. You know, it's not a perpetual down.
Absolutely. And this makes me think of a conversation I had with one of our friends' kids who is 16. I mean, she doesn't listen, so it's not like I'm saying her name or putting her on blast, but you know, she's in love with this 18-year-old boy, and she's so depressed over their interactions and him not giving her the attention. Well, she's 16. It's legitimately her whole world.
Yeah.
And like she's not super popular and gets made fun of at school. And I feel bad for girls, especially trying to grow up in the Instagram world now. It was hard enough when we grew up, when there was no social media and cell phones were brand new. I got a cell phone my senior year when I turned 18. So it was hard enough then when you didn't have to live in a world that was, you're surrounded by constant fake perfection.
Oh yeah.
You know, I this afternoon, I took a bunch of new headshots for my modeling agency, and those photographers could edit those photos to make me look 10 pounds leaner and 10 pounds more jacked. And they can Photoshop off if I have a mole, you know, and then throw it online and act like, boom, casual Tuesday.
Right.
So I can't even imagine what kids are going through. But yeah, 16 years old, you know, that's the end of her existence, is this 18-year-old boy. And at 22, you're not that far removed from 16.
No, and it doesn't matter where you're at in life either. you're in college, or maybe you're not, but you're starting to be out on your own a little bit. You're starting to make your own kind of independent decisions without parental oversight and without maybe the support group that you've had before. You're really just figuring out kind of what being an adult is like.
Yeah, exactly. And I started wrestling at 17 years old. And in the wrestling business, a lot of people will say, whatever age you start at is the age you're stuck at forever. Because we enter a fantasy world. From the day we step foot into wrestling, we enter kind of a fantasy land. So any growing up that happens is accidental, or it's situational. So I would say, I feel like I was mature at a pretty young age, Pete. I think we both probably were, probably more than most of our friends until they had kids, because a lot of our friends had kids young.
Yeah.
But they got forced into growing up a little bit. And when you get in certain situations in life, you get forced into growing up a little bit. But I didn't even get super forced into growing up a little bit until I was older than that, until I was older than 22, 23. I think the first time I kind of moved out on my own.
Well, that's the trouble too, because then consequences start becoming real, maybe a little bit sooner than you're prepared for. But yeah, man, mom and dad have been kind of taking care of you, and hopefully they're still there, kind of thing for most people. But yeah, there's a lot of extra stress, and you got to start to mature up pretty quick. But it's not easy to do.
No, not at all. And to start training to wrestle so young, and she even said on the first episode of her getting introduced on the reality show, was she started training at 18, and it's just been training nonstop for like 4 years. And she didn't have any time to date, and she was looking to find love. It's like, well, yeah, because when you're an athlete dedicated to what you do, like there is no life outside of it. That's why I've pissed on most of my relationships throughout my entire existence too, because wrestling's always been my number one. And I didn't let relationships hold me back. And granted, some of the people I've been with were totally supportive and would help me out, but it doesn't mean on some level it didn't hold me back from that relationship. So to be that young and have never like had a relationship or anything like that, I think that's really heavy. That's a lot to get into. And when you're so focused and so dedicated on being the best,
well, you're probably looking for then that support from an audience. Here's how you feel good about what you're doing. Here's how you get the gratification from all the work that you're putting in. You do it for the love of the game, I assume, although wrestling's slightly different because it's not, it's the same deal, but it's different. You do it because you love doing it, and maybe you would do it in an arena with nobody present. But a big part of the reason you're there is to tell a story and to get the reaction, and you get your confidence, you get that support, you get all that from the fans, I have to imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm training a young guy now, and this is a statement I never thought I'd throw out on the podcast, because it's just a thing that doesn't seem like I would want to necessarily share it. But I told my trainee, he's 24, I told him, I really think the only people who are attracted to professional wrestling or really good at professional wrestling are broken individuals. Like, I think the only reason you get into professional wrestling is if you have a void inside you that needs to be filled by the validation of total strangers. And that's dangerous on a level, because what if you don't get that validation? My life might consist of 2 or 3 shows a week where for 10 minutes, I'm trying to get that validation. And sometimes you get in, sometimes you don't. When you don't, it's an awful feeling. When you do get it, it's a godlike feeling, like it's euphoria. And then you're right back to being normal 6 hours later, and that's hard. So I think the best people at what we do are the ones that are striving to fill that void so badly that they give everything they have to it. So I think wrestling attracts kind of a more broken individual. That could probably be applied to a lot of things, like a lot of sports or a lot of people's jobs. I just live in the context of professional wrestling, and that's my passion. So it's easy for me to examine it from this point of view. Also, I'm really intelligent.
Right.
Super smart. I used to teach psychology classes at Anderson University because of my intellectual and emotional intelligence.
Your intellectual fortitude is so much greater than everyone else.
It wasn't because I was a kiss ass to the psych professors.
Surely not.
No, it wasn't. Actually, it wasn't, because they would have seen through it, right?
You would think.
Yeah.
But that's why psychiatrists don't psychoanalyze themselves. There has to be some degree of separation. So if you're sucking up to them, maybe they don't see through it. And it's real funny when people think they have it figured out because you know that. And I think sometimes it gives you the upper hand to screw with them.
Yeah, dude, workers, man. We're all workers. All right. So, anyway, I guess back to all of the super uplifting conversation. Yeah. So it's just this whole situation is super disappointing, man. And I had a conversation. There's a guy I talked to a good amount named Jay Freddy. And Jay Freddy's the only other foreigner, the only other American that's gone over to Wrestle One to live in the dojo and live that life. And we've become buddies, although I've never met Jay. Like, we've never crossed paths. We always just went over at different times of the year. Probably has something to do with the Japanese don't want that many Americans hanging out at one time.
You can't have an invasion like that.
Yeah. So it's still their world. We're just visiting in it. We've never actually met, but we talk sometimes, which is great because he's the only other guy that really understands the dojo life. Because it's completely different, man. We're 100% isolated. We're the only people who speak English, and we both don't speak Japanese very well. So it's weird to go into a land where it feels like you're walking down the street in the middle of 20,000 people, and you're the only human being. Like, you're the only one person, and people won't talk to you or go out of their way, and they'll clear a wide berth for you on the sidewalk. You know, like 50,000 people can cross the street at one time. It's Shibuya street crossing. It's the busiest crosswalk in the world. Or in Shinjuku, the Shinjuku station is the busiest train station in the world. And like, you can be in the middle of that. And like, you might be you're like the only white person. And like, that's just really tricky. So, and then we go and get tortured in practice for hours. And then maybe there's some food, maybe there's not. And maybe we're too broke to go buy food. So we have to hope that the young kids make white rice and some eggs. So we get to talk a lot and shoot the breeze about the dojo stuff. So we actually had shot the breeze, obviously, about Hannah when this happened because it hurt us both. And he told me a story. He had pretty much the same experience with her. But the last time he saw her was in the States not too long ago. And he went to a hotel to pick up another one of the Japanese guys that we trained with. And he went into a hotel that only had the New Japan Pro wrestlers and the Stardom women's wrestlers. So he walked in as the only foreigner back into a strange foreign land, even though it was in America. And then he said he heard Jason from like across the lobby or whatever, and it was Hannah. And they had a great conversation, and she was like, "Oh, I'm very sorry I left Wrestle One," which is silly, but that's how the Japanese work. Is like they feel shame for being disloyal or something like that when they leave a company. So that's something like they could stick with someone even though she made the better career move. You know, it's not like an American where, like I used the analogy earlier of AAA baseball, but then the second the majors call, we feel really bad about going up to the majors.
Right.
It's like, no, we don't feel bad about going up to the majors. It's the next logical step. Like we're going to be a superstar now. So luckily it was great to catch up with him a little bit and share some of this conversation because, he got to know that person too. And that was one of the people that made him feel that way. And it also really is crazy to me that Jay and I both have vastly different groups of people who were the people that made us feel awesome. So like I became best friends with like Hino and Hiroki and even like Nosawa, who I talked about a few weeks ago. And he's friends with a group of other guys like Ashino and Kodama and Kuma. So it's just wild because those are like the people that reached out to him that made him feel like he existed. But we both had Hannah. Like, we both, not that we were great friends with her by any means. And I wouldn't say we were friends necessarily as much as acquaintances. And she doesn't probably know the impact that she had on me. But yeah, that was a thing. So I want to say this out to everyone too, listening too, but just in general, especially like all the BS going on right now in the world is like, just be nicer to everyone. Like, is that hard?
You wouldn't think so. And I appreciate, because you and I have been making jokes throughout the podcast. So there is something too about just being stupid and having humor, but I think it gets to be the negative when it's at someone's expense. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with being funny or being silly, but as we're talking about, I mean, Twitter, for instance, if you pick that medium, it's not like there's an age limit. You could have some bitter, broken down, jackass, 50-year-old male just going off on some 17-year-old male in high school or a 23-year-old female who maybe she posted a picture because she thought she looked good in an outfit or something, but you just have some miserable person who they just derive pleasure out of tearing people down.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that gets the attention.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is all surface, but I think you have to understand it's not an even playing field. You know, there are some people who are well adjusted, and there are some people who just aren't on both ends of the spectrum. Some people who can't handle the criticism, and some people who are so terrible they think it's just okay to lay into strangers for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't understand how it gets to that point. I feel really bad even for those people who project that kind of negativity. I don't understand the rhyme or the reason, but it's out there. So it's like we have to acknowledge it and try and get better about it.
Life's real hard. I think in a lot of instances, there's no reason to make it harder for yourself or for other people. Not everyone has the same struggle, but everyone struggles, you know?
Yeah. And just be nicer. Like everyone. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you're probably a pretty nice person. You know, I know most of our listeners, and they don't need this pep talk. So it's just me telling a story about a friend who is really cool. But, and then if you come across a foreigner, or maybe even not even say foreigner, and I don't mean that in a negative way, because I was the foreigner in this story. If you come across somebody who's like different from you, just be nicer, because like you don't know their story.
Or hell, could even be as simple as a new coworker in general. I mean, that's got to be weird walking into a new place with a bunch of faces you've never seen. I don't know that anyone's saying, hey, go out and make friends with every person that you see, but you know what? Maybe make an effort to say hi until they start to feel a little bit comfortable. It's not like it is really you going out of your way to be a decent person.
Yeah, a conversation can make all the difference. Yeah, if you have a new coworker, invite them out to lunch or have that conversation or something. And if somebody's obviously a foreigner that probably doesn't feel super comfortable where they are, be nice to them. I was downtown today and I probably saw 2 or 3 people, obviously not Americans. And it could be really scary because they could have been here a year and they're legit trying to learn English, but they're also working their ass off just to try and get by. And it's a scary world. Like they could be walking around every day with anxiety. I walked down the streets of Tokyo with a lot of anxiety, even though it's a pretty chill day of what I had to do.
That doesn't mean that every interaction is always going to be positive either.
No.
I mean, and you just got to, I suppose, take the good with the bad in that regard. And maybe don't even necessarily do it for them, even do it for you.
Yeah.
Make your contribution to being, I don't know, just a better person, a good person, however you want to phrase it. But I don't know, be decent.
Yeah, just try a little bit. It doesn't have to be much. You know, even just, I feel like every interaction in day-to-day life, I'm usually prepared if I see anyone just be like, oh, hey, good afternoon. You know, that's easy, right? Yeah. Like walking down the street. If you make eye contact with somebody, like, oh, yeah, afternoon, man.
Or even, hey, how's it going? And sometimes, you know, there's somebody who maybe doesn't respect the social protocol or just, oh, hey, man, I'm good. How are you? Sometimes they're going to go off for like 10 minutes. But I tell you what, maybe that person needed it. And sorry, you're just going to have to suck it up for the 10 minutes. But
yeah,
is it going to be that big of a deal in the long run?
No, totally not.
But they probably feel a little better for having expressed whatever it was that was weighing on them.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I had a guy come to the gym yesterday just to ask for information. He stayed there for like 25 minutes talking to me about muscle cars. I have no interest in cars, Pete. I don't find them interesting at all. Besides the fact that like, oh, that car looks cool. You know, but hey, dude, if he needed to have that conversation because he doesn't have a lot of friends or whatever, like, cool, man, we're your friends. I'm glad we had the conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of work in a public place too that, you know, gyms aren't for everybody. So if somebody can walk into a gym and feel a little bit more comfortable, and I don't even mean from a sales pitch, but I know a lot of people who won't go to gyms just because they're worried about making an ass out of themselves.
Yeah.
If you help somebody, you might have helped somebody kind of better themselves physically and emotionally.
Yeah. And with that is the only reason I'm still like at a gym that I don't particularly care for, because I'm going to make someone's life better tomorrow. In some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's through communication or giving them a personal training session or whatever, like it's going to make their life a little bit better. But yeah, just be, you know, a little kinder, and it goes both ways, you know. And like I said, this is the reason why if Hino comes to the States, I will bend over backwards to pay for Hino's meals and take Hino out and translate everything for him.
What you mean to say is you will make sure you have your trainee pay for Hino's meals, pay for his gas. And
it's paying dues. Yeah. Young boy. Yeah. I have a young boy just like they do. I'll make my young boy lace his boots, carry his bags, use this Hilton rewards points.
God bless Hilton reward points.
Wait, it might not be Hilton. What's the Holiday Inn?
Either way, I tell you what, they might be owned by the same family. And if they are, how about you send a little sponsorship money this way? We'll hawk Hilton hotel rooms, Holiday Inn, Express or otherwise. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. If you know someone that works in the hotel industry, forward this podcast to them, because I will go on record and say that I'm anti-hotel. I don't like the idea of hotels. I'm a hostel guy. I'm a crash on a friend's couch guy. I'm a meet someone at the club and go stay at their place. Not in a sleazy way kind of guy. Just, it's practical, but I'm willing to sell out.
Jake has hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers, as far as you know.
Yeah.
And him posting a photo from the Hilton, from the Motel 6, from the Fairfield Inn, could do wonders. Just saying.
Yeah, for sure. I'm willing to stay in a Hilton anywhere. Do I need to stay in the Hilton in Milan? I would do it.
Yeah, if that's what it takes.
I'll post about it.
If that's what it takes to help the account, you're all for it.
Yeah, or Birmingham, whatever. Billings, Montana, the scariest place I've ever been.
They got a pool?
Who knows? Yeah, I'll leave a review about the pool. If there's a pool, I'll sell out, please.
Team player, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's my that'll round up my story for the week, man. But yeah, and it turned out like a lot of people had messaged me and said they actually watched Terrace House that knew nothing about wrestling, which I also thought was super interesting. And some people said some really great things about this young lady, and that made me really, really happy, because a lot of people could see how like awesome of a human being she was, and they knew nothing about wrestling, so they didn't even know like that she was a hard worker and that she went out of her way to be nice to foreigners and all that stuff. Like, she just radiated through and made people smile for even at least a few minutes, and that's just fantastic.
Just seemed like a genuinely good person, and it came across.
Yeah, for sure, and I love that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Pete, for patronizing me with the recording of this session, and thank you everyone else for listening. If you get a chance, the YouTuber, throw on some of her matches, man. I won't necessarily say watch the show, but if you're on reality TV, maybe, yeah, just and show some love to anyone and everyone.